Welcome to another episode of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy. Today, I'm joined by a brand new guest. Gemma Strawford is an ultra marathon long distance runner. She's a health coach. She is fueled by positivity and a mental health advocate. Welcome to the show, Gemma. It's great to have you here.
Hi, it's great to have me. Yeah, thank you.
No worries at all. In terms of us clicking the button there, we were talking before the show, and you're already diving into the gold that you were going to bring to the show today. You started talking about your little message of fueled by positivity and what it means to you. So, what does it mean to you?
So for me, fueled by positivity is all about sort of if you've had a shit day, just acknowledge that you've had a shit day. Like it's okay to have those. It's not, some people go, I must be positive all the time. No, that's not life.
Mm,
So for me, it's about if I've had a bad day, acknowledge it. If I've got bad emotions, negative emotions, sit with it, but not dwell on it too much and just think, how can I resolve this? Or what's within my control, what's not within my control, and then sort of move swiftly on from it, kind of thing. Are you sort of like the cloud analogy? The clouds do clear in the end. So that's kind of it, really. I don't really want to fluff it up and think I'm positive all the time and happy all the time. It's not about that. It's just about how you move on from it.
yeah, amazing. I love that. I think as well, we dive straight into the talk about mental health and people's perceptions of it. There's a lot of narrative now, and we could dive into the social media thing about everybody portrays their best life and all those kind of things. But when it comes to mental health, I think there's a lot of lessons needed to be learnt still in the 21st century that actually we're not supposed to be happy all the time. And sometimes when we think we are supposed to be happy and content all the time, that can lead us into our own little downfalls and challenges. I know it did from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think when people then think that, if you're feeling negative and you're telling a friend or something, if the friend then thinks that's how you're supposed to react, they're sort of like, oh, it's fine, it's nothing, come on, be positive about it, think about this. Rather than sometimes I find the most support sometimes when I've got friends or my boyfriend's like, do you know what, you're right, that is really shit. And just validate your feelings in the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
That actually makes you feel way better and to move on from that. So yeah, I think it's a learning curve, but we've come a long way. But it's like anything, I think when it comes to psychology and the brain, there's always more to learn.
For sure. And have you found that with your intrinsic knowledge, like learning about yourself and learning about how mental health works, a lot of that has been done through your own going out there and finding out the information yourself?
Mostly, I'm also a qualified social worker, which we didn't really talk about beforehand, but I've specialised in therapeutically trained for children with disabilities and mental health. So a lot of it is kind of been learning through that and the science behind the brain. I love the brain. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I did psychology at A level and then we did it more in my degree. So I have been fortunate enough to learn that, but then trying to apply that to the everyday person is what it's taken the self-help books and things alongside some short spouts of therapy, which
Mm.
I think, needs to be normalized as well. It's okay to go and better yourself. When I've gone to therapy and it's been at its best, it's been that I've been in a good place but wanted to better myself. So yeah, it's been a combination of everything really.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. In terms of you now, then, I met you or found out about you through training for the London Marathon together. Obviously, running is a huge part of your life, where you've gone on to achieve 4 marathons now, 2 ultra marathons as well. And I know you've got big events coming up as well this weekend. Where did that start for you? Where did that journey of getting into running and realizing that that was a passion start for you?
It was a little bit delayed because I've always been into the gym. I think that comes into sort of being conscious about my body. So actually, I was in the gym to try and look my best, not be my best, and running kind of complemented to that. I got a running injury in 2016, which kind of paused my ability. I think I would have found running a lot sooner if it wasn't for that injury. And then it was 2021. I was still struggling with my knee and a physio said to me, whatever the injury was, it's just caused long term, it's just arthritis now. There's nothing wrong there now. You can run through the pain. And I think having those 5 years of not having something that I enjoyed lit a fire that I didn't know was there. And I just started running because I was told, well, first of all, told I couldn't, which made me want to do it.
Yeah.
And it just snowballed from there. And I think the other thing is that I was going through quite a time in my life, just turning 30. And it is true. You know, you turn 30 and you're like, what am I doing with my life? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And running gave me that escape. So that's
Amazing.
kind of how it started. Um, and then I started finding the running community, different races, different challenges, and just sort of found myself a little bit, as cliche as it sounds. So it was a kind of a physical health and a challenge thing, but it was alongside a big mental health and finding out who I was as well.
Yeah, amazing. In terms of the running community, then, what does that mean to you? Like, what have you gained from being surrounded by people who are like-minded to you?
Oh, absolutely everything. Like it just energizes me. Like it fills my pot every single time. You know, the running community on Instagram is kind of how it started, and you know, you find the right tribe, and there's nothing but supportive there. But beyond that, you know, the park run community and my local running club, you have the shared interest of running, but what I also find is you often have the same values in life as well.
Wow.
And I think that's what I'd realized during that time period of actually what are my core values and outlook on life and who do I want to surround myself with. You know, so runners generally aren't going out getting plastered every weekend because they've got a long run on a Sunday. You know, they're generally caring about the environment and not littering, or do you know, I mean, little things like that. And you sort of find that you've got commonalities beyond running. So it's a big part of my friendship and support group now.
So in terms of that, then finding your values and almost wanting to find out who you were when you turn 30, I think, like you say, everybody goes through that kind of moment where they have a little bit of self-evaluation and they realize maybe they're not on the path that they should be or want to be on. In terms of that, did you find that like some of the internal beliefs and internal thought process that you had about yourself weren't actually created by you? They were almost put on you from your environment, like growing up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the knowledge that I have now, I grew up in an environment where I felt like I couldn't please anyone. And I was never good enough. It was, you know, highly critical in many ways. And I think, you know, it was just the situation that it was with my parents separated and them having different values. So I think separately it's fine, but together it was quite hard for me as a child to kind of work out who I was, what was expected of me. So I think that led to me to being quite a people pleaser, quite a chameleon. I just fit in with people around me. You know, I didn't feel like I was really worthy sometimes. I had quite low self-worth. Um, and yeah, I think that led to me not really knowing who I was, and getting into some quite difficult situations, difficult relationships, abusive relationships. And it in terms of core values, it wasn't really until I had some sort of specific, it was a 6 week therapy course that I signed up for just to learn more about myself. And one of the activities that she'd done was around core values. And I hadn't even really heard of the concept before. And it was an amazing activity that she'd done with me to sort of really identify them. And she was just like, if you make decisions based off these 4 or 5 core values, you're not going to go far wrong. And it took a couple of years to really process that and really sort of observe and think, what do I think about that? Does that align with me? Does that not align with me? But, you know, as I sort of got the confidence to understand what that meant to me, I was sort of able to break free from that sort of childhood narrative.
Yeah, incredible. I love to hear that. And in terms of self-worth in general, then I think there can be a lot of talk around self-worth, especially with women. I think women can end up on the wrong end of like the side of the fence when it comes to self-worth, confidence, and all of those things, especially when it comes to body confidence and the feelings about themselves. And obviously, if in terms of childhood, like childhood background as well, can have an impact on you as well. How have you got on top of, and how do you manage feeling better about yourself, and how have you grown within that self-worth journey yourself?
Oh, that's such a big question, I think. I think there's no one magic thing. I think it's what I'd want to say to people. It's taken 10 years of small little actions along the way. And I could give dozens examples to really do that. The three things I think that come to my mind is learning to fuel my body for health rather than for skinniness. So before I really got caught in that trap of, you know, I did Weight Watchers when I was 19 to lose the weight that I needed to lose. And I got obsessed with being sort of as skinny as possible. And I never had an eating disorder, but I probably had disordered eating in terms of
Mm.
restriction and binging type thing, and using exercise as punishment. So I then did a gym program, a 100-day transformation program with a PT, and that really taught me how to fuel my body. But still, I was focused on what I looked like as a result of fueling myself well still. And if I'm honest, it probably wasn't until I found running that that kind of changed for me. So that would be the second point, that when I found running as my main sport, I was focused on how much faster I can go, how can I fuel myself well for those runs and perform my best. And it stopped being about the scales and started being about performance. So I was measuring my success in a different way, and my body just responded to that naturally. Um, and then I think the third thing would be mindset, to view myself differently. Your brain is so powerful that it doesn't really know what's real and what's imagined. What you tell it believes. So you have to tell it, you have to fuel it with that positivity again, and sort of that self-love.
Yeah, and they say around self-talk, right? And if you don't mind me saying, one of in my coaching program have like the obviously my podcast is called the 100% podcast, 100% coaching program, and I've broken it down into 5 20%. And one of those 20% that I'll ask a client if they're struggling is, are you currently treating yourself as you would do a best friend or family member? And if
Yeah.
the answer is no, you may find out why maybe like a couple of things aren't quite aligning with your mood or how you feel about yourself and all of those kind of things. Because, like, realistically, we all know how to treat somebody else well. But when it comes to us, and again, I can speak from personal experience, and I know obviously you can too, because this is your story today. But when you're not doing that, it can have such an impact on us.
Absolutely. And it's such a spiral downwards that it's really hard to get out of. I remember one of the first counselors I had was like, stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself kind things. And it was the most awkward thing to be able to do, because if you don't believe those things, you feel like an imposter. Like you feel like you're absolutely faking it. But it's amazing what your brain does to adapt over time. It just takes that feeling of being uncomfortable, first of all, to tell yourself that you are worthy, because we all are.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of your background, and you were brought up and you grew up in Essex, yeah?
Yeah.
So obviously we all know the kind of the narrative around Essex and the program that came from it, right? And like, and this isn't going into you, don't worry, but with regards to your mindset around yourself and like the image thing, do you think that had a knock-on effect on your age group or our age group in terms of growing up in that area? Did it give like a really strange kind of side knock-on effect?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if I got it more from being in where Tao is from, or whether everyone really got it from it being the TV program, I suppose. But the friends that I was around, we were the era where social media was just coming up, and it was very much about image and things. So I definitely think our generation has been affected by it, and definitely the people that I was around at school were about the latest fashions, were about how they looked. And I was the chubby kid really in my friendship group for quite a while. Um, and then I lost all of the weight, sort of middle of secondary school, and sort of started getting the boys' attention or whatever, and you're suddenly a bit cooler, aren't you, and everything else.
Yeah.
So it did definitely reinforce that, to be good, to be wanted, you are to look a certain way. But even then, I did receive some criticism from wider family members around, you're getting too cocky, you're getting too confident because you've lost some weight, kind of thing. So again, you've got that constant conflict between different groups.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? It's like I mean, without being disrespectful to the friends and family members, sometimes when people do see somebody flying and doing really well, it almost makes them almost question themselves and think about the person who's doing well and a negative thing because they're not staying the same like they are. And that's something that I'm sure that everybody's maybe experienced when they've been on their own journey. How did you cope with that when some people were maybe making those negative comments about your progress? And obviously, when you're feeling happy and more confident, hearing somebody say something negative about you can kind of be a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, definitely. I think as a teenager, I didn't have the self-awareness or the tools to be able to do it. So I was in constant conflict. Now I've learned over the last few years that to be yourself, you are going to need to say no. You do need to set boundaries with people, and you do need to share your views. And if people sort of think negatively of you of that, as long as you've done it in a respectful way, then it often says something about them than it does about you. And it is holding on to that core values thing again. And sort of, your circles do get smaller, your circles do change as a result of making those life changes. And that's something that maybe people aren't always prepared for. I think I was prepared for that when I made the changes in my life the last few years. So the criticism that comes or the questions that come with it, I was kind of prepared for more. And it is, if you're expecting that and you know that you've made decisions according to your own internal compass, if you like,
Yeah.
then just be reassured the best that you can that, it's not you, it's not a personal thing against your personality, which, you know, the inner child in me would have thought when I was 15 years old.
Yeah, insane. And I think you're being insanely modest with regards to your journey so far on the episode, because I do say when I do speak to guests on the show that I want to see how you've become your 100% version of yourself. And that means like kind of warts and all. And with regards to your story, there were some quite traumatic times that you've had to bounce back from to be who you are now. So you did have an experience of being in a violent relationship in the past. And I think it's important to touch on it because who knows who may need to hear this today. Obviously, a traumatic time for you. In terms of getting out and getting help and getting what you need at the time, how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, so put that into context. So I was 17, so it sort of follows on nicely from what we were just saying about as a teenager, I didn't really have the skills to be able to bounce back. I just went through life and just sort of rolled with the punches. So I was 17 and a half, and I was with him for 2 years, 19 and a half. And a lot of the narratives that I took into my early adulthood was from there. If I one minute he would tell me I'm beautiful, next minute he would tell me I was lucky to be alive. It was very, very extremes of you're fat, you're ugly, you're lucky that you've got me, no one wants you, them sort of narratives that it was quite high levels of emotional abuse, with some physical abuse in that as well. And I apologize if people are listening that triggers, but equally I don't, because I think it's good to talk about it, that it can happen to any of us. Um, and even when he was calling me fat, that's when I started to try and lose weight. And even that wasn't good enough because I then got called other names instead. So it was really hard to get out of. And even when no one knew what was going on because anything physical happened behind closed doors. Um, and when I reached out to a family member and said what was going on, because I had left home at 18 and moved in with him, again, the typical cycles of domestic abuse. They isolate you from your family, they isolate you from your friends, so you're not really seeing or anyone. And I was working with him and he was my manager, so he was even controlling my rota, so I had very, very little control over my life. And I reached out to one family member and she said to me, well, you've got a place with him now, you need to try and make it work. So even then it kind of validated what was going on. So it took a while to get out of. And it wasn't until an old best friend from school but got back in touch with me and realised that something was wrong beyond what I was saying, that he actually helped me out of it. We had code words that we would use by text and things like that. So him validating again, and I use the word validate quite a lot because I think validating people's feelings, validating people's realities is really important, even if you then challenge it afterwards. It's our own realities of what we're experiencing. No one can take that away from us. So he sort of validated those feelings and experiences and was my safe person. But alongside that, I started my social work degree. So I wasn't as isolated as I was. I think one thing that he didn't take from me was my thirst for knowledge and wanting to learn. And I still went to university, albeit locally. Um, and as well as being around people more again, obviously social work degree, obvious but maybe not obvious to some, you're learning about these things, you're learning about abuse, you're learning about safeguarding and everything else. And I was a quote unquote clever girl. I kind of knew what was right from wrong, but it again, my self-worth was so low. So I think those two things combined really helped me get out of it, and leave. But it took a long while for it to completely go. In terms of harassment, in terms of the flat that we got was actually bought, so we had to sell it. It wasn't anything quick to get rid of. So looking back, I probably had a hell of a resilience. It was just keep going. I didn't necessarily have the insight to what was going on as such. I just knew that I had the strength just to keep pushing through, really, to get out the other side.
In a really kind of sadistic way, when you look at that and the challenges that you go through on runs sometimes, when you go through something like that and you're in the middle of a marathon or an ultra marathon, that ultra marathon or marathon is nothing in compared to
Yeah.
what you've been through. So
Yeah.
it's probably made you one hell of a like insanely resilient, sorry, mentally in all aspects of your life now.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a mindset of, well, I'm going to get to the end. You know, every race that I'm completing, unless I physically can't because I've injured myself and it's silly to keep going, I'm going to the end. Well, whatever that looks like, even if it's not my A game, my A plan of, X number of times, I will get there. And yeah, I definitely think I've got a mental resilience there. Beyond that, I'd already moved a couple of times. I've moved 13 times in 13 years. That
Oh,
hasn't been on a yearly basis. Sometimes I've been still for a few years. Sometimes I've moved 3 times in 1 year. I've just you just keep going. And again, going back to the fueled by positivity thing. Yes, life shit sometimes. I'll have a little cry. I'll have a little chat with my best friend. Might even treat myself to my favorite chocolate bar and a cup of tea. And then, okay, what can I control? What can I do to move on from here? And also, what have I learned from this? Because every step of my journey, I wouldn't wish it on people, but at the same time, I wouldn't change it because it's made me who I am with the knowledge that I've got now to be able to help others, whether that's as a health coach or whether that's in social work.
it's incredible. I love it. I love how your perspective and outlook on your past is really forward focused, and I think that's so key. I think when people go through, and again, without speaking with disrespect, when most people go through challenges, sometimes they can get caught on continually thinking about the challenges. And this is why I love doing this podcast, is because every guest I speak to who's been through something really shit, as you say, there are things that happen in life that are shit, then somehow recreates the narrative to make and turn that into a positive. And without doing that, like I said, you'd never have become who you are today.
Absolutely. I think the main thing for me is you are not your behaviors of what's happened to you. So, that's not my identity. And it annoys me when people go, you're a domestic abuse survivor. I'm not a survivor. I'm thriving in life and that's something that happened to me. I'm not identifying with something. I'm not identifying with certain situations in my life. They are situations that are separate to yourself. Whereas what I think, like you just touched upon, people bring it into their identity and who they are, and then they get a bit of self-helplessness of, or I can't do that, or I'm not worthy of that, or I am just this, and therefore don't change their narrative because they've made that their narrative to what's happened. And none of us are responsible for what's happened to us, but we are responsible about how we respond to that, I think, and we have got that bit of control, and people don't often harness that control to make those changes.
Yeah, I love it. I literally, when I saw your profile and your story, I was like, this girl is going to make an amazing guest on my podcast. And here she is, absolutely smashing it. So, yeah, Jem, honestly, your story's class. I love where you're at and where you're going. In terms of running, then. So, obviously, we've spoken on why you got into it, and we've spoken about the love for the community and things like that. Can you throw your brain back to your first ever event and what that meant to you, and when you got over the finish line, that first medal of an event and all those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I jumped straight to an ultra marathon as my first event. Yeah, I
No
know.
way. Wow. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd built myself up to a half marathon distance, didn't do a race because at that time I was like, nah, I'll just run a half marathon along Southend Seafront. I don't need a medal. I was not obsessed with them back then. And then I was looking for the next challenge and I saw ultra marathons. And because I've got a background of hiking, I love the mountains. That's my happy place. And whenever I am feeling low, I just visualize the mountains because it calms me. So I knew that I can walk, I can be on my feet for a long period of time. And I didn't only just sign up for one ultra marathon, I signed up for two in 6 weeks as my first challenge. Yeah. I have done other challenges, not of that level before, but of various levels. Again, it's probably the strength of the mindset, want to challenge myself all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and the 100K was, it was the Yorkshire Dales one, and I run walked it, I jeffed it because some of the hills and mountains you can't run up anyway. Did it in 18 hours, and it was at a period in my time in my life where a lot had gone on. I just made the decision 6 weeks beforehand to completely do a U-turn in my life, leave a long-term relationship, leave everything behind and start again. And yes, finishing that crossing that finish line, sorry, was a tremendous, tremendous achievement. Getting that medal at the end, but the journey that I went on in my own head in that 18 hours was quite incredible as well, because it was time to just reflect on everything that had happened. And it was really amazing because one minute you're with a crowd of people, and the next minute I didn't see anyone for hours as I was walking through the middle of the dark and everything else, and everyone spread out quite significantly within the 18 hours. Um, and yeah, I think the reason why I say that is because finishing that crossing line at 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was such a physical achievement, but I think the mental achievement for me was far greater, doing that, and just it was again that same mindset, just keep on going. I'm going to get to the end. I think the last couple of hours I was more or less walking because it was pitch black and it'd been raining. You couldn't really run. It was so muddy. Um, and it again just shows the mental resilience. And I actually finished the finish across the finish line, and I was so smiling, energetic. The burger van man was like, "You've not just done 100K. You've got way too much energy still. Go back out there." And the finish line people were the same as well. I was like, "You're so smiley. How are you not broken after doing that distance for the first time in that? I've been out there for that long." But it is just my happy place. So it was a massive achievement, but that's when I found myself as well.
What did you learn about yourself on that 100K?
Um, that I can rely on myself, I suppose, the first thing that comes to my mind. I think up to that point, I'd always been relying on well, I've always been very independent, but I've always had someone. And that, I can do things, I can make decisions on my own, I can do things for myself, that life is going to be okay. And no matter what's thrown at you, including a very heavy storm, you can just keep on pushing through. Um, and that life's, yeah, and I know who I am now, and I felt a sense of calmness, of sort of going, I'm finally listening to that inner voice that I'd shut up for quite a long time.
Incredible. And then my next question is, we both have done a marathon and an ultra marathon. I've said in general, I found doing the ultra easier because you can Jeff it, as you say. When you run a marathon, because you're I've whether I like it or not, I do have a competitive inner self. So like I want to set myself a target and try and beat it. Because you're doing that with a marathon and not so much in my experience of doing an ultra marathon, the marathon becomes harder because you are maintaining a speed. Do you find that?
100%. I totally agree with everything you just said. Like the ultra marathons is about the distance. And I think being on trail as well makes a difference. Trail versus road. Road running is so much more about speed and maintaining it and time goals, whereas trail isn't anyway. Never mind the ultra marathons. And I echo exactly what you said. So my first marathons was the year before we met. My next challenge after the two ultras was to do two marathons in a week. So I did Manchester and London within 7 days of each other, both with a sub 4 hour,
Wow.
and to maintain that pace twice over. I mean, I look back at it now and think, wow, what an achievement. At the time, I didn't quite realize it and just thought, yeah, I'm just doing me. But yeah, it's such a different type of running with such a different feel to it. Um, and sometimes I love that, and that is sort of my day-to-day life now. But sometimes I do crave going back to the trails and back to that calmness with the ultras where there isn't that pressure, and even not having the crowds around as well. A lot of people say to me when I do a small race and they're like, there's not many crowds to keep you going. But because you start on the ultras and there's not crowds all the way along the 100K, you're used to being motivated without having to have loads of crowds. And if anything, London was a bit overwhelming at times because it was so the opposite with the crowds. It's a lot. It's hard to be in your own head.
A million percent. And when you said, when you look back on what you did now, you kind of give yourself more credit. And the same for me. But on the day of the London Marathon in April, the listeners will know the story, but I cramped up like horrendously 5 miles from the end. And having
Oh,
like, and I was my goal was sub 4.5, and I was literally gonna absolutely smash it, like, and then bang, like I got cramp. And anyway, we're still on the mission to try and get to the bottom of this cramp as we speak, with a professional sweat test and all of this kind of stuff. But we are getting there. And
Yeah.
like on the day, the embarrassment of me grimacing and hobbling, trying to run for that last 4.5 miles, like on the day, felt way worse than actually what it was, because there was so many people around. I wanted to, you obviously want to like look like a athlete and stuff, but at that point I didn't look like an athlete. I was like in complete and utter clutch mode.
Also, the crowds tell you to run. So
Yeah.
this marathon that just gone, the one we did together, my main goal was just to enjoy it, which is a separate thing I can come on to. But I had similar. So my knee problem that I said that stopped me running in 2016, where I'd been hiking a few weeks before, my arthritis had flared up. So at the 20 miler, my knee gave way. I physically couldn't do that long on it without having to stop and walk. And then you have all the crowds going, keep running, keep running. And you're like, I physically can't
Yeah,
right
yeah, I'm
now,
dead.
which
Yeah.
really makes it hard as well, doesn't it? Because you're there with cramp or whatever, and you're like, I just want to keep going. And everyone tells you to, but you can't.
I know,
And it's
it's one
hard.
of them. Like I'd like lean up against the fence on the side, like there'd be like five people in front of me. They're like, come on, because my thing has Purdy on it. Come on, Purdy, you
Yeah.
can do it. And I was like, I can't. I genuinely can't right now. Like I've got, and then I'd do one calf, then switch to the other one, and as I'd switch to the other one would ping back up again. It was horrendous.
Oh, that's awful. That's
Yeah.
absolutely awful. And that late as well, and you're so tired. It is so tough. The marathon distance, I think, is the hardest, and I'm not sure I'll do a marathon again.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, yeah, half marathon road and ultra marathon trail. I enjoy. The marathon is a very good achievement, but I'm not in a rush to do another one.
You know, the only reason I am is because of that, because I want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
run a marathon knowing that I've nailed the hydration for my body. Like I'm a high rate sweater. I thought I lost a lot of salt, but spoilers for the video on YouTube that's coming out about the day with Precision Hydration and one of their coaches. I'm actually very average with the amount of salt that I lose. It's just
Wow.
the amount of fluid I'm losing obviously doubles the amount of, so like obviously if I lose X amount of salt per liter, because I'm losing more than a liter of salt an hour when I'm running at like quite high pace, means that the
Yeah.
salt goes up. But anyway, that's a story for another day. But I want to be able to run an event with having that nailed down and moving forward, like knowing that actually it doesn't matter how fast I'm running, how hard I'm running, I'm not gonna get cramp and it's not gonna affect me. That's the dream. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're quite like me from what I've seen as well. Like it's the science behind it, wanting to know the whys, whether it's the brain or the body. You just want to know your body, don't you, to sort of understand how to use your body the best for you. And we're talking about marathons and quite fast paces. Other people, that might be something completely different. To be able to go for
100%.
a 5K walk without pain, whatever it's about harnessing your body in a way that works for you to have the best life, I think.
Yeah, 1 million%. I think that's important to talk about as well, because I remember doing the marathon, I was doing hybrid training at the same time, and I was very like cautious of telling Keith this, the coach, because I was training powerlifting as well as the same time as obviously running however many miles it was a week. But there was a point of that where I was obviously January, February, March, which was the months that I was training for the marathon. It's like the start of the new year, and I was like, I want to lean a little bit down. And actually, I don't even mind saying this, and he was damn right. Like I was 99 kg in January, and he said it may be worth you trying to drop a bit of weight just to make the running a little bit easier for you. And that was cool, but obviously that didn't suit the lifting, right? Like, bit, yeah, the like weight moves weight kind of thing. But as much as I tried to lose weight, I wasn't fueling myself well enough. And I was feeling that in every aspect for the first 4 weeks of training, because I'd put myself into a deficit of fuel and calories. It would impact my lifting, it would impact my runs. And my PT said to me, mate, like performance over weight loss every single day of the week. And that's something that you are very passionate about as well, right?
Absolutely. I think that was a turning point for me where I was so focused on looking a certain way. I think up to a few years ago, I was so focused on external validation rather than internal. I wanted to look a certain way. So I was very much focused on that. Whereas running and running for races, me against me, I'm talking, not competitively, enabled me to learn how to fuel my body and be so much more in tune with my body as well. Um, so I know exactly what it needs at what points. And I've not always got that completely right, but it allowed me to change my mindset from a point of deficit to a point of I need to support my body because I'm trying to get it to do something that is quite intense, and therefore it needs the fuel to be able to do that.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. You won't get the results if you're not fueling that engine of yours. What are your favorite things to have on the way round on the longer events then?
Okay, so I'm going to be completely bit rogue here. I've got quite a sensitive belly. I've got IBS, so
Oh,
gels and
okay,
stuff don't do it for me. So I am Percy Pigs and Collins from M&S. Other ones probably available. And on long, long runs, I'll have Snicker bars.
love it.
Um,
I think
so yeah, how about you?
I can tolerate like touch wood. I can't remember who I was talking to about this the other day, but I've been really fortunate. My stomach can tolerate like quite a lot. Yeah,
Mm.
and so I do the gels, but Precision Hydration have got these really high carb. They're like Turkish delights, and
Oh wow.
they're like
Mm.
lime and lemon and lime flavored. Like one is lime, one is lemon, and they taste so good. They are like, yeah, they're the thing that I like. I obviously have a gel, and I'm like, I'll save my Turkish delights for when I really need them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. It's just finding out what's right for you. I think so many people, especially new to running, hear about gels and stuff like that. And I just think you just need to do what's right for you at the end of the day. And I also find chewing on something for me so much better than trying to swallow a gel and stuff. So, but my biggest tip with it is just you need to train with it because I had to train my body to be able to cope to eat whilst I'm running. And it's people that don't feel if you're doing anything beyond a 10K, you really need to have the fuel there. So to train beforehand makes a difference.
1,000,000%. I see your lately a lot of talk about your like easier runs and finding them hard to keep them easy, which is a bit of a backwards way of saying it. Something I think that a lot of runners have experience with. I do too. Whenever it says easy run on my plan, I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. Like, here we go again. I've got to try and slow myself down. What are the best tips that you have for making sure that those level two, zone two heart rate runs and easy runs are kept easy and you're not battling that ego?
Um, One, have a chest strap monitor so you actually get your true heart rate.
Nice. Yeah.
Two, work out your actual zone two heart rate. So I was using my pro coach is where I started on Training Peaks, and that's how I got my ultra marathon training. And he's all on zone two training. So I started off my journey with zone two. So it wasn't like something I discovered afterwards, like a lot of people. So I think for me, I didn't really know much about technical running. I just was a recreational runner before that. So I just did what it said. So that's helped me. But yeah, having a chest strap monitor and knowing your actual true personalized zones. And then I set my watch to it and I stick myself to it, leave the ego at the door. There's such a big thing, I think, to stick it on Strava and type it as an easy run and it being a quicker pace, but you're not doing yourself any favors there at all. And actually thinking from a mental health perspective, the clarity I get on those runs where I just listen to a podcast, go as slow as possible. I feel like I can run forever if you get it right. And that is
Lush.
such a different feeling. And it's such a nice run for mental health rather than running for a certain speed and stuff.
Yeah, insane. And I think it is challenging because if I'm sure you're similar. When you go back through your journey of running, you start with like the smaller distances, and there's a lot of talk about time with those distances. And those distances, I'm talking of 5Ks, 10Ks, right? Everybody's talking about their 5K time, their 10K time, and that can have like a knock-on effect on how you train. And I've been in places before where I've been going out on these like small runs when I was bigger and trying to lose weight myself, where it'd be 2 miles. I'd run like 2 miles on a Wednesday, let's just go for example, run it in, I don't know, 19 minutes, and then go out on a Friday and try and beat that time. That can be more negative and have a worser impact on your training than actually just going out and enjoying it in at those easier paces.
Yeah, definitely. It's knowing that each session is there for a purpose. If you've got a run coach or you're using a run coaching app, I've just partnered with Cooper Run Coach app, and they're just amazing. And they tell you the speeds, they tell you why you're training that way, and just stick with it because actually trying to beat something, I could go out and do two runs that are identical 3 days apart, But if it's around heart rate, well, the weather conditions could be different. I might feel differently. I might have slept differently. Um, I might not be feeling it. I might not be recovered properly. I might be coming down with something. So my heart rate's going to change. And it is just, yeah, not trying to compare it to the last run, not always trying to beat it unless that's what the plan is to do that day. And that's when it comes into holistic health, really. And for me, I use a lot of visualization. That's something that during counseling and stuff, I used a lot of visualization as a therapy tool. And that's kind of my everyday thing now. I visualize myself going for that run, what that run's going to look like, what that run's going to feel like, what I'm going to feel like at the end, to kind of get my mind in that mindset of what I'm going to be doing.
When you're in those areas during a run where potentially you're in that negative spate, how do you find that you get yourself out of it?
I like to do a check-in with my body.
Nice.
Um, so I'm like, okay, I'm feeling negative right now. What is it that's making me feel negative? And I will literally visualize running my mind down my body, which sounds a bit woo-woo, I know, but I literally just go, right, is it my heart rate right now? Is it my chest? Is it that I'm breathing too heavy? No, okay, that's under control. My heart rate's fine. Is it my legs? Is it that my legs are feeling heavy? Okay, yes, your legs are feeling heavy because of this workout, but your heart rate and everything else is fine. Your legs can keep on going. Let's push through it. Or if that's both okay and it is just a mindset thing, then it's just, I find by realizing it's a mindset thing, I can often get through that
Yeah.
and push through it and just try and get my mind off it. And I might change the music that I've got on or the podcast that I've got on to suit what I'm feeling to try and push through. Um, but equally, like the other day, I had one run. I was 100% dehydrated. It was one of these days. It's been in the late 20s, and I kept trying to run, and my body was physically stopping me like every half a kilometer, every 200 meters. And I was just like, I need to abandon this run. I can physically tell that I'm so dehydrated right now. I'm feeling dizzy. And in those moments, because I did that check-in, I was like, it's okay to stop.
Yeah, a
So
million
it's really
percent.
having that mind-body connection kind of thing for me.
I think it totally makes sense because I've been an advocate for meditating and being mindful when it comes to improving your relationship with your own thoughts and how you think about yourself, and even like you say, accepting that sometimes like you're going to be experiencing negative emotions and not feeling that great. And I think running, as much as it isn't sitting down on a mat and meditating, and or even sat in the bath, wherever you do it, is a real active way of being mindful and meditating with yourself, because 9 times out of 10 you're probably just focused on your breathing. Maybe you do have headphones on, but that those moments where you do check in with yourself and you can relate to your body and dive in really do mirror the impact of what of what sitting down and meditating could do. And also it's like the same thing but whilst being active. I think it totally makes sense that you would do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I also find that if I was sitting down and doing meditation, which I've tried and I don't really, I think you're right, I meditate in other ways, more active ways. You would find that loads of thoughts would come into your mind and you're trying to sort of release them again to sort of help yourself be still. I think I do that a lot in running. Like it's a time for me that all those unprocessed thoughts or um things that have happened, especially with work and stuff, I haven't had time to consciously process. It's a time that those thoughts start coming into my mind. And I try to, again, like the teacher in meditation, not to dwell on it, acknowledge them and let them go. So I think it is a bit of a declutter of the brain as well.
Love it. Yeah, I've said that so many times when people have asked me about the benefits of running. It's just that time on yourself where you can like put files in a drawer, right? Okay, I'm looking at that one now. Bang, slide that one away. I'm done with that one, and all those kind of things. Yeah. So yeah, amazing. Jem, we're gonna go. I've got three more questions for you. One of them's random for today. Two of them are traditional for the 100% podcast. You've got a t-shirt on that says "Be your happy place." I've noticed
Yeah.
this today, right? So my question to you is, what is your happy place, and how do you get there?
Um, physically, my happy place is on top of the mountains. I love, love, love nature, but we can't always access that. So for me, in terms of how I get there, it's a lot of visualization for me. I say that that is a big tool that I would use in mental health in general. So if I'm feeling stressed and things, I will visualize that. Um, but aside from that being a physical place for me, it's about being in the moment. I love really practicing being in the moment. So that whether that's with the running friends, with the, when I'm at, that's what I love most about the races and stuff. You're so in the moment. And like, I do pacing and things for run through. You're so in the moment, helping your runners get through. My happy place is in that exact moment. I'm not dwelling on my past. I'm not worrying about the future. I'm just doing me right now, and letting go of what could be or what's happened.
Insane. Yeah, I love that. Almost impacting others as well, which is so nice. Like from where your journey has now evolved to. Next question. You're obviously into you're a mental health advocate. We've spoke about holistic health. We've spoke about physical health. We spoke about running. What are the three things that you do on the regular that create your 100% version of yourself?
My three things. Have you ever heard of the Blue Zone diet?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so the Blue Zone diet is linked, it's linked to your question, but it's basically the research they've done across the world of areas of communities that live into their hundreds, that they're living their longest and the happiest of life. And when the researchers done it, and there's small little clusters of tribes, there's a documentary on Netflix I'd really recommend. It sort of breaks it all down. But the three different areas that they say that I could then align my three things to is connection, so family, friends, running, community, a good dose of that. It's eating wisely, so fueling my body, like we've talked about today, full of like good nutrition, um, knowing what my body needs. Like I'm anemic, so I make sure that I get enough iron in my body, and then eating any treats in moderation. So if I'm craving a treat, I'll be like, is that me as an emotional response right now, or am I really fancying it? And if I am really fancying it, then I'll give myself that treat. If it's
Nice.
an emotional response because I'm feeling a bit sad right now, then chocolate's not the answer because I'm still going to feel sad after. So yeah, eating wisely, being in tune with your body, and then just like the third thing they say is outlook on life. So it's sort of your view of life, like we talked about, your purpose, what you do to unwind, what you do to recharge, and yeah, how you view the world, I suppose.
I love that. I've learned something new today. Can you? But I'll ask you after. But you're gonna need to send me the Netflix. Like if you can find a Netflix show, I'll definitely watch that.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah, a lot.
interesting.
Insane. Yeah, I'm really excited to go and watch that. And then final question of today's show, which is the traditional final question on the 100% podcast. What is the greatest bit of advice you've ever been given?
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
So my first one, I had someone say to me, "Do you want to be healthy or do you want to be skinny?" And it's such a simple question, rhetorical question, but it really stuck with me. And that's what I remind myself of when I'm trying to chase certain goals or something, or not quite happy with how I look or something like that. I want to be healthy and skinny are two different things. And the second thing is know your worth.
I love that. I love that so much. Jem, today it's been an amazing conversation. I feel like I've got so much out of the show today. I hope you have too. Where can people come and find out more about you if they want to come and see you on your running journey and all of the other amazing things that you do?
Yep. So the main place is Instagram. So it's gems, GEMS _ run happy, run healthy.
Insane. Your link will be in the bottom of the description. If you have enjoyed today's episode with me and Jem, please go over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and drop us a 5-star review. It does go a long, long way to helping out the 100% podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, higher, like, subscribe below. Again, it helps a lot with the algorithm and all of those things of getting this podcast up into the stars. Hope everyone has a great day. I'll see you all here with a new episode every Friday. Take care.